Hey everybody, this is Carrie with From Seed to Spoon, and welcome to our podcast, Why We Grow. Today, Dale and I were so lucky to meet with Katie from Katie's Krops. She is such a fantastic, inspirational person. I can't even explain to you everything that she has done in her lifetime, and I can't wait for you all to hear more about Katie's Krops and how she started her nonprofit when she was 9 years old. So sit back and relax, and I hope you enjoy our conversation we had with Katie as much as we did.
Well, we are here with Katie with Katie's Krops. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, first of all, can you tell us a little bit about what Katie's Krops is? Because I don't know if anybody knows all about it.
Katie's Krops is my nonprofit that I started when I was 9 years old back in 2009. And we empower youth to start vegetable gardens and donate their produce to soup kitchens, homeless shelters, families in need. And we also host garden to table meal distributions where we provide healthy meals for those in need in the community. And in addition to our gardens and our meal distributions, we also have an outdoor classroom where we teach kids in the community about gardening, giving back, being good stewards to their environment.
Wow.
That is so awesome.
That's impressive. 9 years old.
It was, honestly, just the craziest experience starting what I was going to do for the rest of my life at 9 years old. Because then I'm 2 years post-grad, and when I graduated, I didn't even have a question about what I was going to do. I was just like, oh, I'm graduated. I can fully devote my time to Katie's Krops now. So it's been insane.
That's amazing.
That is so awesome. That is so cool.
Yeah. What made you start that at 9?
So when I was 9, I was in the 3rd grade, and I brought home a tiny cabbage seedling. It was like this big. I planted the seedling in my backyard, and it grew to be a 40-pound cabbage.
Oh my gosh.
Which was astonishing. My brother was 4 years old at the time, and my cabbage was bigger than he was. So just for a little bit of context. But I looked at my cabbage and I thought, this is far too much for my family and I to eat. And every night before I sat down to dinner, my dad would always tell us just how fortunate we were and how there were some families who relied on soup kitchens for what might be their only meal of the day. And so that's when I got the idea, and I decided that I wanted to donate my cabbage to families who might not otherwise have a meal. So one Wednesday morning in May of 2008, I brought my cabbage to a local soup kitchen called Tri-County Family Ministries in North Charleston, South Carolina, and I was blessed to be able to go back and serve my cabbage to 275 guests at the soup kitchen.
Wow.
And that one experience really changed my life forever. At 9 years old, I wasn't aware of the issue of hunger and food insecurity. And going to the soup kitchen, getting to see kids like my brother and I and families like mine who were waiting in line, and just the kindest people, and really experiencing firsthand being able to provide them with a healthy meal really changed my perspective on things. And I thought, if one cabbage can help to feed 275 people, then imagine how many people an entire garden could feed. And that was really what inspired me to start Katie's Krops.
Man, this is like a movie. There needs to be a movie about this.
There
Katie.
does. I love that idea.
So once you got started, how did you get started? Like once you donated that cabbage, like where did you go from there? And how did y'all get to where you are today? I mean, I can't wait to hear this story.
So after I donated my cabbage, I told my mom, I was like, we have to go and we have to start a garden in our backyard. And the director of Tri-County, actually, Miss Sue, shared with us just how rare donations of fresh produce were to the soup kitchen, and how they mostly got packaged and processed food, which are very important, but also so is fresh produce. So I thought, I had so much fun growing my cabbage. Why not go and start a garden? And then I can do the exact same thing, take the produce and give it to Tri-County. and it'll be a way for me to help fill that void of fresh produce at the soup kitchen. So my mom and I went and we purchased plants for the backyard. I planted them where my cabbage grew. And it's actually crazy because where I'm sitting right now, my cabbage grew directly behind me in the backyard.
That's cool.
Oh, wow.
And so it's so crazy just to be sitting here and talking about this story and being at the kitchen table that I sat at when I decided to donate my cabbage and having where my cabbage grew in my backyard. But I took that space where my cabbage grew, I planted vegetable seedlings, and I would water them, weed around them, and then when they were ready to harvest, we brought them to Tri-County. And after bringing them to Tri-County, we found another soup kitchen in my town of Somerville, and so we started bringing things there. And then I began hearing from kids across the country who also were passionate about ending hunger in their communities and gardening, and they said, how can we support you? How can we help you? And that's when I got the idea that there was just so many like-minded kids across the country, and I thought, I want to be able to empower them, and I want to help them to start gardens in their communities. So that is when we began the Katie's Krops Grower Search, and we provided the funding and tools for kids across the country to start gardens in their communities where the produce was donated. So we started that over 10 years ago and began expanding outwards and having kids between the ages of 9 and 16 start gardens in their communities, because I was 9 when I started. So I was like, I would love to have these kids get involved. And so that is how Katie's Krops slowly began to expand across the country. And then meanwhile, here in Somerville, one of the places that I was donating my produce to was a local soup kitchen / homeless shelter. And one day I arrived with produce, and there was a sign on the door that said, we regret to inform you, but we've had to close our doors due to lack of funding. And this was something that was super sudden. Like, I had been there that Monday, and then Wednesday the doors were shut. And I was just shocked. I didn't know where these people were going to go who were relying on the soup kitchen for meals and to feed their families. And so that led to the creation of the Katie's Krops dinners and meal distributions. I thought, I have this big, beautiful garden. And at that time, I'd expanded from the garden in my backyard. And I now also had a garden at my school that was growing as well. So I thought, I have all this produce. Why don't I take it and use it to create these meals? So I approached the head of food services at my school. And I was in the 6th grade at this time. And I said, I would love to use the produce from the gardens to create meals. Would you be able to kind of guide us and help us if I gathered my friends and I together? And so we said, yes, of course. And my friends and I came together, the head of food services at my school, and also my 6th grade science teacher, who is absolutely amazing. She believed so much in what I was doing with my gardens and with wanting to help the community that she actually quit her job to come and help us out, which was amazing. And so this whole big team, we came together and we started serving these meals. We would base the meals off of the produce that we had growing in the gardens. Whatever we couldn't grow, we would purchase. And we started feeding anyone who needed a meal in the community, no questions asked. And so that began our Katie's Krops meal distributions, which we are going on 12 years of.
Oh my gosh.
This year, which has been crazy. It's, oh my goodness, it's insane. So everything kind of started about the same time, but we had the meal distributions that began, and then we slowly began feeding more and more people with our meal distributions, and we moved locations, and that really took off. And then we had our growers across the country who were just amazing, and they were doing incredible things. And really it was just a snowball effect. Everything started so small and then just kept growing with time. And now here we are.
Wow.
Yeah, that's amazing. Speechless, right?
I know.
I can't even imagine doing all that at that age. Wow.
So how soon after starting it, how young were you when you decided or when you realized this was going to be what you did? Like when you knew this was going to be your life?
I don't actually know at what point I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. Because I started all of this when I was 9, it really just became an everyday normal thing for me. Like it wasn't anything out of the ordinary. And so growing up, I mean, I had the garden at my school. So my classmates and I would go up to the garden and that was just normal. And I would be making trips to the soup kitchen. And then we started the Katie's Krops dinners in the 6th grade, and so my friends and I would do that as well. And it was just so, I became so used to Katie's Krops being my everyday life that I didn't think of it as out of the ordinary at all. And I think maybe when I graduated high school and Katie's Krops was still so prevalent in my life and just had really grown so much, and I was getting ready to choose where I was going to go to college, I think that's when it really hit me, because I knew that I couldn't go far away for college because I wouldn't be able to come back for the dinners and see the people that I had grown so close to and come back and check on the gardens and things like that. So that really shaped my decision of where I went to school. And I ended up going to College of Charleston because I, first of all, just love Charleston. It's beautiful. But also I was close enough to where I was a 35-40 minute drive to come home, to still come to the Katie's Krops dinners, to still check on the gardens and come to the work days and things like that. And I think that's when I knew, okay, this is definitely something I can see myself doing long term. And throughout college, I was really blessed to be able to still take on a huge role of Katie's Krops, but also be able to kind of focus on my studies and say everything that I learned in college, I was going to be able to bring back to Katie's Krops and use it to grow Katie's Krops and expand. And then, I mean, I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. And when I graduated college, which was just about 2 years ago, May of 2020, I was able to quite literally jump right back into Katie's Krops full time because I graduated in my childhood home because we were back home for COVID. Classes were online. Like I was no longer at school, and I was able to jump right back in when the need was the greatest. So it all kind of worked out very well.
That is amazing. So
How many gardens do you have going right now?
So now we have over 100 gardens growing across the United States in over 30 states.
oh my gosh.
Wow, that's amazing.
So I think we just kind of glanced over that at 9 years old, you just learned how to garden and just started growing food. So how did that go about? Like, how did you learn? Like, where did you start? Like, what all did you start with? Like, tell us more about that.
So really the first thing that I ever grew in a sense that this was mine, I was taking care of it every single day, was my cabbage. And I know that's like definitely not the case for most people, as they start out with a vegetable and then it grows to be the size of their 4-year-old brother and they're like, oh, like I'm going to take up gardening. I know that's not the normal way that it goes about, but that was really the
Cool
first
way.
Yeah.
Exactly, right? It's a cool story. So I'm like, okay, I'm not mad about it.
That's a great program. I love. My daughter did that one year. One of our daughters did that, and it was such a cool program. So
She had fun.
Yeah.
I don't think it was nearly as big as yours was.
Oh, you blew ours out of the water.
It really is the coolest thing for kids to get into gardening at such a young age. And I mean, if it wasn't for the 3rd grade cabbage program, like who knows what I would be doing with my life now. But that really was
something cool on that, and just as cool as, I mean, you're a pretty passionate person. I bet that you would have found a need and you would have gone after it. I'm really happy you found this one, though. This is awesome.
So how did you teach yourself at 9 what to do to take care of that cabbage, to get that huge of a cabbage?
Honestly, no idea. I do know. So I live on a golf course, and there's woods behind the golf course, and there had been deer that were coming in and like eating our neighbor's shrubs and stuff. And we didn't have a fence in our backyard or anything. So I actually did build a cabbage cage, which I know that sounds really weird, but it was.
I've been there. Cabbage. So you got to do that. You're not going to lose that cabbage. I really.
No, I was so invested. So I called my grandpa. I was like, we have to do this. It was literally wooden posts and chicken wire wrapped around it. And I mean, it did the trick. And when I first was telling this story, I was like, oh my gosh, that's insane. And now I'm like seeing the things I do to keep the deer out of our garden. I was like, that was probably the least insane thing that I did. But I mean, it did the trick. And so, yeah, that was really what got me into gardening. Growing up, I had a small salad garden with my family and things like that, but nothing I was as invested in as my cabbage. And then after that, I was like, this is awesome. Like, I gotta keep doing this.
So what other things did you grow after the cabbage? What all things did you kind of dive into from there?
So after the cabbage, I definitely started with the simpler things: tomatoes, basil, peppers, those kind of smaller, easier to grow things. I am really lucky. I do have a master gardener who I came in contact with when I was starting the garden at my school. Her name is Miss Lisa, and she is still with us to this day. So she's been with us for over 10 years now. And I mean, she's amazing. She actually this morning was just teaching a gardening class at the outdoor classroom in our flagship garden. So she's still super passionate about teaching young kids about gardening. But I was one of those young kids she taught about gardening, and she kind of took me under her wing. And she really just explained everything to me. And I think the cool thing about gardening is it's a really like a learn as you grow type of thing, because it's a trial by error. You try something, if it doesn't work, you try something else, and you kind of just get better at it the more and more you garden. So I think over the past, 14 years, I've kind of learned what works and what doesn't work, and I'm still learning, but I think that's really helped me get better at gardening.
Okay, so I've got to ask you, you're like one of the big things you're trying to think about is growing at scale, trying to help as many people as possible, right? So you know a lot about the foods you can grow that produce a lot and that can feed a lot of people. So if someone's out there and is thinking, you know, I would love to get involved in the program, like what can I grow that would give enough? Like if you grow carrots, those are great, but it's a lot of work to grow a bunch of carrots, right? Whereas if you grow some white peas, you're going to get a lot from it. So what have you seen as the biggest crops or the best crops to grow for those situations?
That is a wonderful question. So we are a big fan of Japanese eggplant. I know that's a strange one, but we get upwards of 40 eggplant per plant. It's crazy. Also, and they're so good too.
What color are they?
They're purple.
Okay.
And my grandpa had a recipe where he would cut them up and fry them in olive oil and bread them. Oh my gosh, amazing. They were so good. So Ichiban eggplant, you can grow so many. Also, cherry tomatoes for us.
Mm-hmm.
Thousands and thousands and thousands of cherry tomatoes we get every year. Definitely peppers as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of it also depends on the soil that you're putting your plants in. It's been a huge thing for us. We found that if you're adding compost to the soil, if you're enriching your soil, you will receive such a bountiful harvest as compared to if you don't check in on your soil. So definitely either testing your soil before you plant in it or making sure that you're enriching it with compost. That's a huge thing. We make sure we always do that. And also rotating your crops too, so that you're not planting the same thing in the same bed that's taking up the nutrients, and then now the nutrients aren't there for year after year. So I think that is a huge thing for us. But definitely Japanese eggplant, cherry tomatoes. In the fall, we grow snow peas, which are one of my favorite things to snack on in the garden, and probably all of our little volunteers as well. But those are insane. We get so many. Also, collards. I know that sounds super random and something you wouldn't think of as being high yielding, but we would harvest like 100 pounds of collards at a time. Because we would have so many, and you just snip off the leaves and then they just regrow, and it was the coolest thing. So I think there's different things depending on the season, but I think for us, snow peas, collards, kale as well, things that they can regrow. And we also tried celery this year. Not that celery is super high yielding, but I'm just really excited that we got to grow it. And
Did y'all have success? It's hard to grow.
yes, it is. We did have success. I'm very proud of us. I learned that you actually have to snip off the outer like stalks, and then the inner ones grow, and they look amazing. So we've never grown it before, and we've never had a successful year before with it. But this year, something went right. So that was pretty cool too.
I would love to grow in South Carolina weather for just one season. I bet it's so much fun out there.
I forgot that y'all, yes, so we're so blessed, and we can grow year round. So we always have crops in the ground. And I forget that other places don't have that.
An example, look what you did. You took a blessing that you had in life and you turned it into something that you could use to help other people, right? You live in a place where you can grow food year round. So you were fit to be the person to start the organization to do that, right?
I mean, I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason, and especially when you put it like that. Then I picked the cabbage seedling I did, and I got started down this path. And also that I live in South Carolina and I can grow year round, because we quite literally will always have plants in the ground. And probably a month and a half ago, we took out the last of our cabbage and our lettuce. We actually still have Swiss chard in the ground that we planted that surprisingly still looks pretty good. But yeah, we just took out our winter crop.
Wow. So we have some stuff that overwinters for us. We have spinach and kale that will overwinter. Celery, I don't know if you can really grow it here because it gets so hot so quick. It gets hot where you are too, right? Like you have some pretty hot summers. What are those collard greens growing in the summer for you too there?
No, so the collard greens are growing for us in the fall and winter. The weather here's been so strange, I can't even explain it. We've had several 90-degree days already, but this morning when I woke up, it was 49 degrees.
Oh, wow.
And now it's like 80, so I just don't.
How those peppers doing with that?
I just have a lot of questions. Everything is doing really well, but we planted, and then we had one really super random 26-degree day, so everything got a little stunted. But it's all really come back. It likes the warmer weather, and this year we finally have drip irrigation kind of more set up than we did in the past. So everything's getting water directly to the root, and we're not dealing with as much overhead watering, so we're not getting the molds and the mildews and things like that we were getting from the overhead watering and all the evaporation too, especially with the heat.
Yeah. Okay, so we have 4 kids, another one on the way. So we would love some guidance. How would you inspire kids to eat healthier? I feel like we do a pretty good job with our kids, but at 9 years old, you're not just starting a garden, you're getting all your classmates to do it. Like, how did you get other kids to be so excited about gardening? I think is that's a good question to ask too. Like, yeah, those are all the questions, Katie.
I mean, honestly, those two things really go hand in hand. I think younger kids, once they kind of see how gardening works, they plant a seed or they plant a seedling, and then they get to watch it grow, and then they get to watch the harvest come in. I think just the whole life cycle of a plant is so fun for younger kids to watch. And it's also so rewarding for them to think, oh, I planted that. Especially kids that come up to our flagship garden. They'll be like, oh my goodness, I put that tomato plant in, and now it's 8 feet tall and there's 30 tomatoes on it. And they are so excited about it. And then because they planted it and watched it grow, they want to try the tomatoes. They're like, I want to know what this tastes like. And I think that's been a great way that we've found that kids just love to try what they grow. We'll have kids walking around the garden eating a collard leaf like it's a snack, an everyday thing. You just pull off a collard leaf and you start eating it, or Swiss chard or things like that. Things that you would never think to just eat. These kids are picking it from the garden. They're like, I grew this, like, I want to try it. And then they're like, wow, this is actually really good. And so we've really found just getting younger kids into gardening, watching them see how easy it is for them to grow their own food, which is such an important life skill to have, how much fun it can be, and then how much better it tastes when you grow it yourself. When we pull carrots out, like once I've had a carrot that I've grown myself, I don't think I can ever eat grocery store carrots and think like, wow, this is amazing. Because when you've had a carrot that you've grown yourself, oh my goodness, I swear it's like 10 times better.
Mm-hmm.
And you know that was no pesticides used or anything, and you know exactly where your food's coming from, and you know that there's nothing that you wouldn't want to put in your body on it. And trying that, I have all the kids try carrots, and they're always like, oh my goodness, this is so good. And I'm like, do you prefer grocery store carrot or do you prefer this carrot? And they're like, oh, 100% the one that we grew. And so I think that's something that's really cool too, to get kids excited, is doing little taste tests and things like that. They just realize how much fun gardening is and how much better things taste. I don't know if it's whether it's the fruits of your labor and you're like, wow, I worked so hard for this, or what it is, but it's just the coolest experience. And we have kids now as young as 1 and 2 years old who are regulars in our garden. I mean, spending multiple days a week in the garden, and they could tell you where everything is. They know exactly what to do. It's just the coolest thing.
So do these people just come, like, show up at your garden to volunteer, or how does that work?
So we've built, over the last 14 years, we've built an amazing volunteer base. And I think the opening of our outdoor classroom as well has brought in a lot of younger volunteers. We moved to our current flagship garden, which is on the campus of a community church in our area, in March of 2020. We had no idea what was coming, no idea that all the big groups of volunteers that we were supposed to have to come in to kind of build out this garden weren't going to be able to because of COVID. But I'm so proud of this garden. We've turned it into a space that's just so welcoming, inviting, and such a great experience for kids and adults to come in and learn. And so we built this garden out. It is about a football field and a half in size, if not more. So it's crazy big.
How many people did you have to do this with?
We had about 8 people that built out this garden.
Oh my gosh.
Which is, it's insane when you think about it, because we must have 50 volunteers lined up to come and do all sorts of different jobs around the garden and get it all built out. And then COVID happened and it was no longer a possibility. Mm-hmm. And so we really, with this small group of people, built out this garden. And now most recently, we've added an outdoor classroom to it. And the outdoor classroom is one of my absolute favorite parts of Katie's Krops. We just built out this wonderful area where we utilize the garden as a learning tool. And so we'll do all sorts of different classes, focus on the environment, focus on the garden, giving back, being good stewards of the earth, and kind of using the outdoors as a classroom. And so we have brought in kids from the community of all ages to come in and learn. We do story time in the garden, arts and crafts, composting, recycling classes, gardening, science classes, weather classes. We've done yoga. The local aquarium has come in. I mean, just so many incredible and different classes that we've done since opening this outdoor classroom. We opened the outdoor classroom in March of 2021 because there was such a need with kids who were doing online school and virtual school. Because of COVID, they needed to get out and see other kids and learn in a way that wasn't sitting behind a computer screen. And it was great. Like, we got so many new people up to the garden, and that's what changed our volunteer base. And now our core volunteers are between the ages of 2 and 7. Like, I spend my whole week with like 5-year-olds, and they really are my best friends.
That's so fun.
That sounds like my life.
Oh man. Wow. So how do they go? Do they have to like sign up to go to these classes?
Yeah, I never actually answered your original question.
Oh no,
we asked a lot of questions.
There have been a lot of questions.
So yes, we have volunteer days where we'll do garden work days and we'll have kids come up. And then we also, after a lot of our classes, do volunteer days in the garden as well. So yesterday I did story time in the garden, and after story time we did like a 2-hour work day. And so the kids that went to story time then got to come up and help in the garden. And so that was a really cool thing. So sometimes we have work days attached to classes. And then other times we just have work days where volunteers will sign up, and we'll kind of just put it out to try and get as many people who are interested in coming up and able to come up and enjoy the garden, experience the garden, and get to give back.
That's amazing. I wish we lived closer.
I know.
I would be there like all the time with the kids.
I know.
So if somebody does live close, where do they go? How do they do it?
So if you live close, or even if you don't live close and you just want to see kind of more about what we do, our website is katieskrops.com, and it's Katie with a K and Krops with a K. And so there you'll be able to, if you do live close, sign up to join our volunteer list. And we also do have a lot of virtual volunteer opportunities as well, things where you don't actually have to live close to help out. So that could be an opportunity for somebody who would like to kind of see what we're up to. Also, we have information on how to become a Katie's Krops grower. So what I didn't mention is during COVID, we lowered our growing age. So it started as kids between the ages of 9 and 16. And during COVID, we lowered it to 7 because there was just so many awesome 7 and 8-year-olds reaching out and saying, we want to get involved. And these kids worked so hard, and I mean, the best decision we ever made was lowering our growing age. So now kids between the ages of 7 and 16 can apply to become a Katie's Krops grower, and that opens up in October, and all that information is on our website as well, along with our wish list and ways to support us that way. So if you are interested in becoming a grower, know somebody who is, or want to just connect with us more, our website's a great place to go.
So if a kid wanted to become a grower, what type of options are out there? Like what types of things could they grow? How does it work? Because I think our kids, once they hear about it, are going to want to be involved. I would love for us to be involved. So how could we become a grower? Like what all do you grow? Can you give us a typical scenario?
Yes. So if you guys were interested in becoming a grower, which I think would be so cool, you would go onto the website. You'll find the application on there. And we ask that unless there's a reason why you're unable to, that everyone handwrites their application, because that way, especially since a lot of it's younger kids, we can really see how passionate they are and get it from their own words. But you handwrite your application about why you want to become a grower. So you'll tell us where you're going to plant your garden, where you want to donate your produce to, answer some questions like how big your garden will be, do you have a water source, like who's going to help you out with your garden, things like that. So we can really get to know the kids and we can get to know their garden that they want to start. And then depending on the funding that we have, we'll determine how many growers we can welcome on. We do, for first year growers, we do all-inclusive grower boxes. So they have everything the kids need to get started and plant their garden as soon as they get their box. So it'll have seeds, plant markers, soil testing kits, trowels, gloves, a good and bad bug chart. I mean, seed starting kits, like everything that you could need will be in this box. And then the kids will also have access to our private grower website where they will track their harvest totals, how many pounds they've donated. They can share photos and share other updates and connect with growers across the country. So they'll have access to that as well. And our amazing master gardener that I mentioned earlier, Miss Lisa, is also an awesome resource for our growers. So you can email her if you have any questions, things like that. You get to choose, though, what you want to grow for our first year growers based on where you're located in the United States, or, well, for now it's only open to kids in the United States, but we're hoping we'll be able to welcome international kids as well once we hit our goal of having gardens in all 50 states. But based on where you're located and your growing zone will depend on what kind of seeds we'll send. But we'll send a large variety of seeds for you to plant, and then where you donate your produce and where you actually physically have your garden. All of those things are up to you. And so I think that's the really cool thing about our growers is they're so passionate, and it really gives them a sense of responsibility. Kids as young as 7 are doing amazing work to help their community. So it's kind of all up to the kids on what they do, and we just are there to support them, provide the tools, and answer any questions they may have.
That is so cool. We have
Yeah.
a 6-year-old that will be 7 very soon, and
Yeah.
she'll be very excited to find out that
She will be 7 next month. So yeah.
Just
So-
in time too. Oh, that's perfect.
And she will be gung ho about this. So
yeah.
we better buckle in because we're going to be a lot of something for someone. She's going to have a plan.
She will have a
This
plan.
is so cool, Katie. This is so awesome for setting this up. I mean, I'm speechless. I don't really know what to say.
I know. It's incredible.
It's so inspirational. I told you before, I think we start recording it. I want my daughters to watch this. You know, I think it's so cool to see that an idea that you had, you know, when you were in 3rd grade. And I think that's, you know, I think one thing it really shows too is the power of this new digital age that we lived in, because you grew up in a world where it was possible to connect with other kids your age, you know, and come up with an idea like this and do it. I think it's just so cool. And I tell my kids all the time that, you know, you don't have to be a grown up to do something. They always say that when they grow up, they're going to do this. And I said, well, you don't have to grow up to do anything. You can do it now. And now I'm going to bring you up every single time, Katie, about Katie. Every single time they tell me that they need to be a grown up to do something.
No, I mean, I agree wholeheartedly. And I think that's the really cool thing is kids are realizing now. I mean, youth have such an incredible power because they don't see the obstacles in things. They don't see, when I look at something now, the more I grow up, the more I realize I'm like, oh, well, this could happen, or maybe this could happen. But when you're younger, you're just like, this will be so awesome. And you don't see any of the things that could be an issue. And you just say, I want to do this. And having that power and just realizing you can do anything is so amazing. And I think really building on that and having youth follow their dream and encouraging them to do whatever it is they want to do to make a difference is so important. And youth can really change the world. I mean, I wish I still looked at things the way that I did when I was 9, because I love just being able to see this would be great. This is the vision that I have. Like, I'm so excited to see how this turns out. Instead of seeing any of the number of things that could go wrong, they just see any of the number of things that could go right.
Well, keep hanging out with the 5-year-olds and you'll keep seeing it. Well, Katie, you've been super inspirational. I don't think we could have kicked this podcast off any better than this story. So thank you so much, Katie. This has been awesome. Do we have any other questions we want to ask her?
Oh, man.
I feel like that was a heck of an ending.
Well, if anybody wants to follow your journey or anything, are you on social medias and stuff for them to follow you?
Yes, we are on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, all as Katie's Krops, Katie with a K and Krops with a K. So be sure to follow us on there, and you can also check out our website for more information as well and to kind of see what we are up to.
And I almost forgot, on Park Seed, there's actually a collection of seeds that you can buy that the portion of the profits goes towards Katie's Krops as well.
That's right.
So if you go to the Katie's Krops collection on the park website, you will see that there. And we will get the Katie's Krops section added into our app as well. So I'll make that promise to you now, Katie. I'm going to be working on that. I want to get the section added into our app so that you can shop the Katie's Krops selection right there directly. So I'll probably be working on that tonight.
I bet you will be.
Yeah. That's something I'll add into our app. So
thank you all. Yes.
Well, thank you for what you've done, Katie. And we're definitely going to apply for the program. I think our soon-to-be 7-year-old won't give us much of a choice about it.
Oh, I love that. I will be eagerly awaiting their application. And thank you all so, so much. It's been so much fun to talk to y'all and such an honor to be one of the first on the podcast.
Well, it's been awesome for us too. And we'd love to check in with you again sometime and see how things are going. And if we can ever be of any help, please reach out and let us know.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Thank y'all.
All right.
Well, thank you, Katie.
Bye, Katie.
Thank you.